I've actually spent a lot of time analysing the top players in the world. It's something that, as a coach that's worked with the very best in our country, that we need to analyse everybody, because you need to be able to work out what tactics you're going to use for every match. And actually, this year has been really helpful for me because I was assigned a project of doing exactly that, which was analysing the top 16 pairs across all the doubles events and basically trying to work out exactly what each player did. So what their strengths and weaknesses were, what each pair did. So obviously the strengths and weaknesses of the pair, and then actually a game plan as how we would approach each match. And I probably think I've done in excess of 120 hours of work analysing all those pairs across this year, because I've been given the time, so every cloud has a silver lining, and with COVID, it's given me the chance to do that. With any junior player, the more that you can play when we're let out from these situations that we're in at the moment, is the more you're on court, the more you're going to improve. Most people obviously start at a club, and that's great, but then it's trying to progress into moving into the county system, getting yourself a coach so you have one-to-one sessions, because they're the ones that make you improve the most, doing one-to-one. And obviously within the squads, really taking in information from your coaches. But I think the biggest thing is working on technique with those coaches that you do work with, in terms of having the right grips, having the right technique overhead. And also it's things like having the right technique on defense and on net shots. A lot of players, when they're younger, tend to hold the racket really tight, so they've got it in their hand really, really tight. And if there's no movement within the hand, that makes everything really, really tough, and the timing's tough. So having that nice relaxed grip and doing that with your coach so that you can play every shot perfectly is definitely the key. I mean, there's a big tradition now within the game that I would say in nearly every country that we play against, all the top countries, that every single coach that I come across are the players that I used to play against. And it's that wealth of experience that you gain from playing that obviously helps you coach. You know what the players are going through. Hopefully you're technically prepared for going into coaching. And that's what I'm seeing across the world. I was in Thailand last month, and it's you can just see everybody that's coaching behind the court has been an ex-world-class player. But what that does is obviously bring you one part of the experience. But what I have said is the very, very best coaches I've ever worked with, it doesn't have to be that they're a top player to go on and be a great coach. I think the big thing that I've worked with lots of coaches on is what you're doing with your mind, and those kind of things. Because I think as you become a really top player, it's less about learning techniques and needing a coach to train lots of different things for your game, because you're not going to make massive improvements. But it's more about, like I say, your mindset. And we've had some great coaches, have some great coaches currently that they're really thinking about the tactics of the game, and when to use sort of speeding up the game and slowing down the game. I think that's a big part of the coaching that's needed these days. We mustn't forget that England as a whole in the world of badminton is only a small nation, and I think the fact that we've got two pairs in the top 20 in the world is absolutely remarkable. They are doing incredibly well. Ben and Sean out in Thailand produced some absolute magic, and I think it probably even shocked themselves of how well they were playing. But in terms of how well they can compete against the very best pairs, and obviously the training that's gone into that is enormous, and that's what we're training for. And we've got another squad that's coming up just behind these top two pairs, that we hope one day will knock those top two pairs out of the way. And that's it. It's a bit of a conveyor belt system that we would like to keep creating, that younger players are knocking off all the top players to get their spots. And the challenge comes at the minute is the junior system isn't really happening too much because of, like I say, the COVID rules. So it does make it difficult that we can't nurture them, because only the elite players are allowed to come to Milton Keynes and train. But the whole plan is that it's a nationwide challenge for all coaches, players, and systems to each share the knowledge of how to train and how to actually, make a young player improve quickly, so that they can get that foot in the door at Milton Keynes and become a national player, and then we can keep that rolling for all of time, really. Do we want any sort of bad boys of badminton? It's one of those things. It obviously creates things for people to talk about. People talk about Nick Kyrgios a lot in tennis. Is he a great tennis player? Yeah, he absolutely is. Are we trying to encourage that? No, I don't think we are. But we do want people who are feisty on court. We want people that have that grit and determination. A really good example of that is probably Carolina Marin. She's got that character of, you're in for a war when you play that girl, and she's shouting and yelling, and some people don't like it. Some people think it's all part of it. But I think it's just having that balance, that you can control that character side, so that, it boosts your performance, but it doesn't go too far that it, becomes that potentially could be rude sort of thing. Well, I'm 43, so he's got a couple of years under me. I mean, I've last year had my hip resurfaced, so this year's been quite good for me in terms of having rehab and recovery. But one thing that I would definitely say that's helped me to come back from that kind of an injury is yoga. So I spent a lot of lockdown doing yoga every single day. Because the one thing that you get when you're sitting around and doing nothing is that your joints, your muscles become incredibly inflexible, and then when you do try and play, you're just not going to be able to move the same. So that's something that I would definitely recommend for all players, and something that a lot of our players do at Milton Keynes. They get on YouTube and follow some good yoga patterns, and I think that's something, when you do get a bit older, you've just got to look after your body better. And if you just don't do anything, you're going to struggle when you come back, because you'll be so sore, so stiff. And I think, like I say, do those kind of things, and that can massively help. Well, obviously, we really want to have the world's best singles players. Every country does, and that is a big challenge in its own right, because the level of singles right now is incredibly high. When people talk about England not having a top level player, obviously Rajiv Fusev was retired not too long ago, and he was right up there, as a great player, European champion. It's very, very top ranked, and it's never going to be easy in singles. It's an event that in more recent times that we've perhaps not done as well in terms of how many players that we could get to the top level, because a lot of youngsters naturally go into the doubles events, which we've been very successful in. In terms of what are we trying to do, we're obviously got Rajiv Fusev now as the coach for singles. He works with all the players in Milton Keynes and does some of the junior sessions in Milton Keynes as well. But obviously the hard bit is, like I say, currently with COVID, is to get out and share the knowledge around the country, and try and produce those singles players, because obviously at the moment everything is set in all over the country in different cells, trying to set up different centres, and really just try and push the singles game. It's a bit of a starting plan and moving on with it. Singles, like I say, is always going to be the tough one. It's the golden event. So trying to take a youngster to that top level and compete against the likes of Carolina Marin and Kenta Momota is incredibly hard and quite daunting. And I think sometimes that's why younger players turn to doubles, because they see the success of the top English players, and that's the way they would like to go as well. But in terms of us trying to produce the best single players, yeah, we're definitely doing it, and we're definitely trying to make those inroads. But it takes time. That's the thing. It does take time. It's a big project and something we're looking at many, many years down the line of trying to breach those top nations. The biggest thing for me is the technique side. So if you've got the right technique and then you're practicing it over and over again, then absolutely that's 100% the way to go. The challenge comes is when actually your technique's not quite right, and then you're trying to produce the same shot over and over again, but you're doing it in a way that is slightly wrong. So no matter how many times you add up 2 + 3, it's never going to equal 4. And so it's having a coach that can guide you through some of these techniques, so that when you're going to practice a shot, that it's actually the right way. Because when it matters, at the end of a game at 19-all in the third, if your technique's flawless, you'll make that shot 100%. Obviously, Badminton England run a massive program of coaching education. For example, I work at Leicestershire as well, and we've encouraged all of our juniors, top juniors, to take the coaching qualifications. So, these are players that not necessarily play at England level, but very, very high county level, that we're getting in to learn coaching styles at a young age, so that those players can then spread out across the county and work in clubs. Obviously some of it through volunteering, and some of it through being paid. But once a player hits a very high level of county player, they obviously know pretty much what they're going to need to know in terms of about how to play the game, and like I say, the right techniques to pass on and teach. And I think that's great that we're getting youngsters in coaching more, and then actually expand the knowledge across the country. Lots of areas of doubles that you really need to maximise. The big one for me, I think, is defence. It's if a player has a really great defence, it's like the building blocks to the game, because nobody can hit through you. So you're very solid. When people are hitting big smashes, that you're staying calm, and that you can get everything back, and you can move the shuttle around. The other big thing, of course, is having the speed and agility to move around the doubles court. Singles players tend to move in longer dimensions, whereas doubles players need to be more explosive and very, very quick on their feet. And that comes alongside with how fast you can move the racket in terms of speed of hand hit, that kind of thing. But a big one that obviously we work on a lot at the top end of the game is the serve return. So having a really good serve and then actually being able to return really well, because it's where a lot of points are won and lost at the top end of the game.